London Zoo truly is a special place. Opened all the way back in 1828, it is the oldest zoo in the United Kingdom, and you can still feel this rich history through buildings like the Blackburn Pavilion, while exhibits like Gorilla Kingdom, Tiger Territory, Penguin Beach or Land of the Lions showcase how the zoo has evolved in the 21st century. But how successful has this evolution really been? Does the park still rank among the best zoos in the world? Or at least, is it worth a visit? Perhaps even for tourists? Or will the zoo that was once so influential leave you disappointed today? In the following video, we'll take a close look at London Zoo, but first I'd like to know, which zoo in the United Kingdom do you think is the best? During my 2-week trip, I visited 10 different facilities in total, and I will of course introduce them all to you as well. So this video is only just the start to a whole tour of UK zoos, and I hope you will join me, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. But now back to London Zoo, where a small queue had already formed before opening. So I had a little time to admire the beautiful mosaic designs. Behind the otherwise rather unremarkable entrance, you immediately have several options for starting your tour. The zoo is divided into 3 areas: the pink zone, the blue zone and the orange zone, which we will explore exactly in that order. So I headed straight down through the tunnel into the pink zone on the other side of the outer circle, which separates the zoo. And here we start off with Enter Africa. This area was opened in 26 and is of course African themed, so fittingly we start off with the newly famous capybaras from South America. What? I think they only live here temporarily, but still quite funny. Normally this enclosure would also be home to pygmy hippos, another animal that got internet famous in recent years, and as you can see, with a bit of luck you can get really close to them here, and I do like their 2 outdoor enclosures overall, not just for the great viewing options, and you can even go inside their house should they be indoors, but I'm not really a fan of how this house is set up. The living conditions for the animals look fine, but it feels rather cramped, and the viewing opportunities here don't offer particularly nice perspectives. It feels weird for something that was opened in 2014. Next up are the giraffes, and their house is a little bit older to say the least. In fact, it was built in 1837 and is the oldest zoo building still in use for its original purpose in the world. And to be honest, for something this old, it's still impressive, even in terms of animal husbandry, though it's certainly not a modern indoor hall where the giraffes actually get some space to roam. And when you take a look at the rather modest outdoor area, which the giraffes can also share with zebras and ostriches, I think it's quite apparent that this is nowhere near a state-of-the-art giraffe enclosure. The other indoor areas here don't really come across as modern either, even though they had a bit of a facelift. But it does fit quite well with the atmospheric videos being shown here. By the way, after the okapi became known to the Western world in 1901, it was the Zoological Society of London that first gave it a scientific description. Into Africa is also home to warthogs and African wild dogs, which I did not see, and there were also no signs at the enclosure, so I honestly thought they had been phased out. But according to the zoo's website, 3 siblings moved in here in August of 2025, so I was here just a bit too early. We now have finished Into Africa, but still, when we continue on the other side of this bridge, we nevertheless stay in Africa. That wasn't always the case though. Just across Regent's Canal you'll spot the old Snowdon Aviary towering into the sky. Back when it opened in 1965, it was actually the very first walk-through aviary in Great Britain, and it's still one of the zoo's most iconic landmarks today. On my last visit in 2015, it was still home to numerous bird species, but since its big reopening in 2022, it's been renamed Monkey Valley and now houses, well, monkeys, or more precisely, colobus monkeys. It's still a walk-through aviary, but these days you'll first have to listen to a quick set of rules before going in, just to make sure the encounter between people and animals runs smoothly. In short, no eating or drinking, don't crowd the monkeys, and you'll be all set for a great experience inside. I stayed quite a while here, but the colobus monkeys were mostly busy eating. Nevertheless, I really enjoyed my time here, especially since this is just an amazing enclosure. The aviary covers a ground area of about 1,500 square meters, and it also rises up to 27 meters high. If you do the math, that adds up to a volume of around 20,000 to 25,000 cubic meters. That's a huge amount of space for the monkeys, and thanks to plenty of climbing structures, there's really a lot of room and enrichment for the 10-member family group. The ground is densely planted. There are lots of sunny and shady spots for the monkeys, plus even a waterfall. And if they ever need to be separated, there are good holding areas, and the visible indoor section also seems to be a decent home on cold winter days. On top of that, the whole thing is rounded off with high-quality educational content. Interactive, family-friendly, attractively designed, and even funny. This enclosure is just fantastic, and honestly one of my absolute highlights of the entire zoo. If I were to make a top 10 list of my favorite enclosures I've seen this year, this would be a serious contender. On this side of the canal there is nothing more than a really nice community garden, the outdoor part of the community and learning hub that provides space for workshops, school programs and community projects focused on nature and wildlife conservation. Back in 2015 there used to be some old aviaries here, but that entire area is now off limits. So it's straight back over the bridge and right into the next walk-through aviary, this time home to ring-tailed lemurs. Walk-through lemur exhibits have really become standard in zoos. Honestly, I've lost count of how many of them I've already shown in my videos. And even back when this one opened in 2015, the concept wasn't exactly new. Still, that doesn't make the experience any less memorable. Of course, I've seen larger exhibits where the lemurs have more space to retreat, but at least here staff makes sure visitors keep a respectful distance. Behind the aviary, there's also a beautifully designed indoor section. Here you can spot northern narrow-spiked boki, or by their Malagasy name, boki boki. It's a species you can see 4 times in the UK, but in the rest of Europe only 2 times in Germany. The similarly rare eyes I unfortunately didn't get to see, so I'll have to fall back on my footage from Frankfurt Zoo. Maybe I'll have better luck in Chester. At least I managed to get the grey mouse lemurs on camera here in London. They are also quite a rarity, at least on the European mainland, but in the UK there are no fewer than 12 zoos keeping them. But that wasn't even the actual nocturnal section yet. That's waiting 1 floor below in what's called nightlife. And the name really says it all. I mean, it's basically the red light district of London Zoo. Other zoos prefer blue light, so that I cannot make that joke. Anyway, there are usually lots of nocturnal animals to see here, but despite 2 visits, I wasn't particularly lucky and didn't get to see much more than the Senegal bush babies. But I had much better luck just upstairs in Rainforest Life. Even 10 years ago, when I already made a German video about London Zoo, I mentioned that this isn't exactly a modern tropical house. And in terms of atmosphere and immersion, it doesn't really compare to one. If you know, you can just tell that they converted the existing small mammal house into a rainforest exhibit rather than building something completely new. But even if that comparison isn't exactly flattering, maybe that's part of why I actually like Rainforest Life. I mean, as someone who visits a lot of different zoos, it really stands out when a concept is executed in a completely different way. And especially when they use the so-called fogging to push the humidity up to tropical levels, it still does create that rainforest feeling. Plus, 3 aspects of a tropical hall are still covered. There's plenty to see with with sloths, a few species of New World monkeys, and Rodriguez flying foxes. On the ground you'll also find red-footed tortoises and southern three-banded armadillos. And thanks to the open layout, all of them have quite a lot of space. The house covers a total area of around 1,500 square meters, and yes, if you're lucky, you can get really close to the animals, which makes for some truly special experiences. So even if you don't exactly get the feeling that you're walking right through a rainforest yourself, it's still a fantastic habitat for the animals and a great experience for visitors. So really, what's there to complain about? Oh, and from inside the house you can also look out into the Alautra red lemur enclosure, though unfortunately they didn't show. And with that, we are almost done with the pink zone. The old Gorila house from 1932 is architecturally fascinating, but it's currently closed off. And since the reindeers are no longer here, all that's left are a nice enclosure for small clawed otters, and another equally well done one for dwarf mangooses. As a little insider tip, I'd recommend taking the path down to the canal, where you can enjoy a quiet stroll away from the crowds. Ah, that's lovely. But now, back through the tunnel and onto the blue zone. Here I started off with a bit of disappointment, because back in 2015 I still got to see both the aquarium as well as the reptile house. After 96 years, the aquarium was closed off in 2019, and there is no new aquarium here, which is a bit of a shame, especially considering that back in 1853, London Zoo opened the world's first aquarium ever. And I mean, come on. With that kind of history, you kind of need an aquarium. The reptile house was only closed in 2023, and fortunately there is a new reptile house, which we'll come to later. Though, well, given that I was born in 1989, I think you can guess why I'm sad about this. Don't you? Yes, that's right. I wanted to see my Dudley terrarium. And how will J.K. Rowling react once she learns that this is transforming into something new? Think of the children! Oh, actually they did. It's going to be a play area. More precisely, kids from 3 to 8 will be able to playfully try out different jobs like zookeeper, conservationist, scientist, and more. Which honestly sounds like a really cool concept. Next up is another historic area, although red-necked wallabies and emus have only lived here since 2008. But right behind this outback enclosure, you can still see the artificial cliffs once part of the Mappin Terraces, which were built up until 1914. At the time, this was considered a highly modern area, inspired by Carl Hagenbeck's concept of open enclosures without bars. Over the years, many different animal species were kept here on 4 different levels. In the front, you'd often find waterfowl, pelicans or flamingos, and at times even king penguins. Behind them were smaller enclosures for species like deer or pigs. Then came the bear pits. Up until 1985, you could even see polar bears here. And on the very top, goats and ibex lived on the cliffs. And especially when you add in the fact that the aquarium was located underneath, or rather inside, these artificial rocks, it becomes clear. For its time, this was an incredible, ambitious and impressive complex. Of course, animal welfare here eventually couldn't keep up with modern standards. There's no way you could or should design a zoo area like that today, but honestly, it really was such an iconic part of the zoo, and now it's just an Australian meadow with a fairly generic collection you'll find in almost every zoo. The cliffs are unused and the aquarium inside is gone. I can't really understand what they have done with this piece of history. Sure, I can't fully judge what challenges they face here with heritage protection, statics or renovation costs, but there has to be a way to make this area more attractive again. Just as food for thoughts, I created a quick mock-up of an idea with enclosures for ibex and spectacled bears. Not only because that would be closer to the species once kept here, but also because London Zoo currently has no bears at all. But again, this is just one idea. In the end, of course, the people in charge know best what's really possible. But I also know I'm not the only zoo fan who isn't happy with the way this historic space is being used right now. But enough complaining, let's move on to the Komodo Dragon House, which was opened in 2004 by none other than Sir David Attenborough. The largest lizards in the world live here on an area of, I would say, roughly 240 to 300 square meters, designed to resemble a dry riverbed. And thanks to a 20-meter long glass front, visitors get an excellent view of the animals. The Komodo dragon itself wasn't very active, but without giving too much away, I did manage to get a few better shots in Colchester just a few days later. But at least in London, the Mindanao water monitor next door was busy showing off its climbing skills. Thankfully, we don't have to climb to reach the tiger territory, which opened in 2013. Just by walking up the ramp, you get your first views through the glass into two net-covered enclosures for Sumatran tigers. Both enclosures are designed to be naturalistic, with features like feeding stations that encourage the tigers' natural behaviors. However, only one of the enclosures has a large pool for the tigers to bathe in, while the other has a high platform that provides a wide view. It's a bit of a shame that both enclosures don't offer both features, but I'm hoping they rotate the tigers regularly so the cats get some variety. The visitor experience here is really well done, with multiple perspectives on the enclosures and even a viewable indoor area. I also really like the addition of the adjacent enclosure for white-cheeked gibbons, which wasn't here back in 2015. On the other side, the enclosure for Babirusa is located. Just like the red riverhawks next door, they live around the Kesson Pavilion, another iconic building in London Zoo. Built in the 1960s, the pavilion immediately catches the eye with its uncompromising brutalism, though few visitors probably realize that the ripped concrete walls are meant to evoke elephant skin. Even fewer might guess that the copper roofs are designed to resemble a herd of elephants gathered around a watering hole. It's not surprising then that the house was originally designed for elephants and also for rhinos. The last elephants moved to London Zoo's sister zoo in Whipsnade in 2001, where they now live in a space that could never have been accommodated in London. Back in 2015, the pavilion still housed Malayan tapirs, and shortly before that, even the pygmy hippos. Today, the era of pachyderms here is completely over. Next up is the bird safari, a walk through aviary where you can of course see a variety of bird species. In this beautifully designed and densely planted habitat, however, you sometimes have to look a little closer to spot them. This Edwards pheasant, for example, could easily have been overlooked. Other species here include lilac-breasted rollers, Edmund storks, scarlet ibises, and red-crested turacos. Next up, we are now heading into Gorilla Kingdom. There is actually another walk-through aviary here, but it was closed, so we head straight to the area's namesake highlight, the gorilla habitat. From across a water moat or through large viewing windows, you can look out over the 1,600 square meter outdoor enclosure where the group of gorillas can be observed very well. You can also look into one section of the indoor area, though the animals can of course also retreat into backstage areas, which meant I only managed to see the gorillas on my second try here. But then I got great views of the family's two youngest members as well, both born in 2024. As you might have already seen, both the indoor and outdoor habitats are well equipped with dense climbing structures, platforms, hammocks, and plenty of enrichment. So I'd still call this enclosure, opened in 2007, quite solid, yet I'm really pleased to see that a further expansion is already planned. This will also involve that the gorillas will get another large primate species as roommates, which could certainly be enriching searching for both animal species. I still think we are probably talking about the white-naped mangabees here because they live right next door, though on the architect's website they are actually using black-crested mangabees as an example, which is kind of weird because they currently don't live at London Zoo. Well, we just have to wait and see, including whether the somewhat outdated-looking enclosure for Diana monkeys will also be modernized. And with that, for the conclusion of the Blue Zone, we are circling back to the new reptile house, The Secret Life of Reptiles and Amphibians. An exhibition with a strong focus on conservation, made clear right at the entrance with views into behind-the-scenes breeding areas. There are also plenty of well-presented educational elements that highlight threats such as fatal fungi or put conservationists themselves into the spotlight. Almost all of the species on display here, whether snakes, lizards, turtles, frogs, or salamanders, share one important fact. They are listed on the IUCN Red List as endangered, or in cases like the panther chameleon, at least as near threatened. So this isn't just a place to see a diverse but carefully curated selection of reptiles and amphibians, 33 species in total, broad enough to be fascinating without being overwhelming, but also one that hopefully leaves you thinking about how many of these creatures may soon disappear. Among the highlights are certainly the critical endangered Philippine crocodiles and the Chinese giant salamanders, the latter of which cannot be seen anywhere else in the United Kingdom. The reptile house is located on a square that also houses the exit, but we still have the entire orange zone ahead of us, so we head straight next door to the giants from Galapagos. The name might give it away. In this house, which opened in 2021, we meet Galapagos giant tortoises living in a beautifully designed enclosure. The farmyard, on the other hand, mainly hosts, well, farm animals like alpacas and llamas, or blonde Mangelicus, a woolly pig breed that's threatened with extinction. Here and in the adjacent animal adventure area, there are really nice signs that clearly show the focus of engaging children, and they will certainly have a lot of fun in the classic petting zoo with the goats. Friends of architecture, or fans of Harry Styles, will enjoy the old penguin pool. Opened in 1934, this enclosure is considered a masterpiece of British modernism, an architectural movement that prioritized functionality over decoration. Penguins haven't lived here since 2004, but the listed building still stands, looking pretty much as it was. By contrast, the historic Blackburn Pavilion, dating back to 1883, remains home to birds today. Around the building, several modern outdoor aviaries have been added, home to plenty of feathered beauties, among them wrinkled hornbills. But it's inside the pavilion where the real highlight awaits. In the entrance hall, you first still look into the aviaries from the outside. Here you can spot, for example, purple-naped lories, orange-headed thrushes, or the Socorro doves, a species extinct in the wild that hopefully will be reintroduced into its native habitat someday soon. As exciting as that already is, for most visitors the real treat is the walk-through section. In this beautifully designed, dense indoor rainforest, you can encounter a wide variety of bird species completely without barriers. Sure, this is by no means a novelty anymore, and even in this very video we've already visited a number of walkthrough aviaries, but in such a historic building it still feels quite special. And while many of the species here are ones I've seen in similar aviaries plenty of times before, others, like the collared trogons, are genuine rarities. So all in all, the two walkthrough areas in the Blackburn Pavilion have plenty to offer for bird lovers. And now we come to the part of the zoo I was most excited about, Land of the Lions, which opened in 2016, just a year after my last visit. With a budget of around £5.2 million, they didn't just create a new enclosure for Asiatic lions, it's a whole themed area that also houses Hanuman langurs and vultures. And in terms of theming, it's certainly one of the strongest areas of the zoo, though I'm sure some visitors might find a few elements a bit over the top. Certain corners do have a bit of a theme park vibe. But I really like the many creative details, like Bollywood movie posters featuring lions. I was also impressed with the lion's habitat itself. With 3 connected enclosures plus retreat areas, the animals have plenty of space, and the different structuring and furnishing of the 3 areas make the whole lion habitat quite varied. The viewing opportunities for visitors are also very well done. I especially like the view through a harp-like barrier, something I've seen for example in the leopard enclosure in Leipzig, but as far as I know, never for lions. In any case, this is definitely one of the highlights here in London Zoo. And for me at least, this is also true for tiny giants. Because as I mentioned already in my video on artists in Amsterdam, I really wish more zoos would put insects in the spotlight. And London Zoo does exactly that with this exhibition. Here you can see a huge variety of insects and other small creatures, easily outshining the collection of most other zoos. Among them are American cockroaches, garden fruit chafers, desert locusts, giant American land snails, giant stick insects, Mombassan train millipedes, hissing cockroaches, 2-spotted assassin bugs, jungle nymphs, question mark cockroaches, flower beetles, cave crickets, sunburst diving beetles, and the impressive hooded katydids. And even if you find insects a bit creepy, it's worth strolling past the numerous terrariums to at least catch a glimpse at the coral reef aquarium. After all, there is not much more for aquarium lovers in London Zoo right now. Definitely not for everyone is In with the Spiders, a section that lives up to its name. It's a walk-through spider enclosure. And even though golden orb spiders and Madagascar orb weavers are completely harmless, this exhibit is certainly not for anyone with arachnophobia. But nevertheless, I still think this is a fantastic concept. Far more approachable for most visitors, and probably even a real visitor magnet, is the walk-through enclosure for squirrel monkeys, an absolute classic in zoos. Back in 2015 you could walk through this entire enclosure from both sides, but now part of it has been closed off, presumably to give the animals more retreat space. That's commendable, but it does make the visitor route a bit less convenient. Behind the Blackburn Pavilion and here as well, there are now dead ends that force you to turn around. So we head back quite a way and finally pass the parrot aviaries and the historic 3-island ponds to reach the zoo's last 2 highlights. First up is Butterfly Paradise, another treat for insect lovers, but this time in a form that should be enjoyable for everyone. Or is there anyone who thinks butterflies are gross? As you can already see, it's basically a classic butterfly house, much like the ones you'll find in many places, often even as standalone attractions. And for good reason, it's a classic. But I must say I do find it quite funny that the building is shaped like a caterpillar, which basically means that if you enter at the front, you come out the back. And yeah, that's a lot to digest. And I would say the perfect place for that would be the beach, so thankfully our next stop is Penguin Beach. Opened in 2011, this is still both one of my favorite enclosures here at London Zoo and one of my favorite penguin enclosures in general. Overall, the habitat is an impressive 1,200 square meters in size, with a large pool holding 450,000 liters of water, plus extensive land areas with nesting spots. And in 2025 alone, a whopping 18 Humboldt penguins were born here. Visitors can overlook the entire enclosure from a grandstand, and there are several points where you can also get a great underwater view. So in my view, for both the animals and the visitors, this remains a very well conceived and designed exhibit, and I really have nothing to complain about here. Overall though, I do have a few criticisms of London Zoo, which leads me to a conclusion that isn't easy. Even if the video so far may not have made it obvious, to me the zoo is, despite all its highlights, a bit of a mixed bag. Before I get into that, I'm genuinely curious what you think. Do you feel more or less the same, or are you really impressed by London Zoo? Let me know in the comments. My mixed feelings come partly from the fact that right now surprisingly little is made of the zoo's rich history. It also has to do a bit with visitor flow, which is sometimes less than optimal, and themed areas that neither clearly separate from one another nor harmonize particularly well. It just doesn't create a consistent overall impression, as if the zoo is lacking a unifying concept. It feels more like a patchwork of occasionally beautiful modern enclosures alongside older exhibits that are in more or less urgent need of renovation, and even some underused or closed areas. If you look at the individual areas separately, London Zoo really does have a lot to offer. Monkey Valley, the Blackburn Pavilion, Land of the Lions, Tiny Giants and Penguin Beach in particular are all excellent. So London Zoo is definitely still a good, worthwhile zoo to visit, but anything that could make the zoo truly stand out somehow doesn't get the focus it deserves. This isn't just about history, it also applies to the rich conservation work of the Zoological Society of London. While it is highlighted here and there, the zoo overall doesn't make it really tangible. What is ZSL? What do they stand for? What do they actually do? Why is London Zoo a ZSL conservation zoo written in bold, but as a visitor you do not get to feel that, you do not get to understand that? What does a ZSL conservation zoo actually mean? I've thought a lot about why I ultimately felt a little bit let down by the zoo, and here's what I came to. All the history, the listed buildings, and the zoo's fairly modest size of just 15 hectares makes modernizing the park a real challenge, one that perhaps haven't been met with the right overreaching concept. Many of the large animals were moved to the sister zoo in Whipsnade, and individual enclosures were modernized, but this hasn't necessarily strengthened the overall impact of the park. Since 2022, the Zoological Society of London has a new CEO with Matthew Gould, so hopefully he brings some fresh energy. There's also this image of a master plan, supposedly stretching to 2050, which people found buried in the files of the Gorilla Kingdom expansion. It looks exciting and promising, though we don't have any idea if it was even officially commissioned by the zoo or not. All in all, I want to stress it's really just a few adjustments that could make the London Zoo experience much smoother. The issue mostly lies in details and how everything is put together, but London Zoo has everything it needs to make a much stronger impression well before 2050. And I am cautiously optimistic, especially with the upcoming expansion of Gorilla Kingdom. And if you're feeling positive too, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to leave your thoughts about London Zoo or this video in the comments, and make sure to subscribe because there are quite a few other UK zoos coming up, including the already mentioned sister zoo Whipsnade, and here's a little spoiler, I definitely liked Whipsnade more. So with that, I'll say goodbye until next time, or as we say in Germany, auf Wiedersehen, und sorgt mal bitte dafür, dass ich bald wieder keinen Reisepass brauche, um in euer Land zu reisen, wenn ihr versteht, was ich meine. I definitely want you back, want you back, want you back for good. Yours truly, Martin.